Functional rig training, rig programming module. So for most clients, the following recommendations would be most appropriate. 2 to 3 whole body sessions per week, strength endurance training parameters, use of time under tension over repetition max for rig stations, and work periods of 30 to 60 seconds and rest period. Regarding exercise selection, you want to try to choose exercises that cover all of the movement patterns, not necessarily within the same session, but we want to try to cover the squat pattern, lift pattern, press and pull, the smash and rotation pattern, gait and locomotion, and moving and carrying load. As we said, you may not be able to cover all of these within the same session, but as you program different sessions over the course of the week, we want to try to cover as many as possible. Giving you examples of how to program for some of these different movement patterns then. For the squat pattern, we may choose to use the step and do box drives. For the pull pattern, we can do pull-ups. Gait and locomotion, maybe something like a resistant band, pop up and run. Moving and carry and load could be a core trainer half get up. For the lift pattern, we could use a piece of functional kit like the kettlebell with 2 hand swings. And the lift pattern is one of those movements that is quite difficult to do with a lot of the exercises or stations on the functional rig. Not impossible, but it is slightly easier to use a piece of functional free weights kit to train that movement pattern. For the press pattern, we could do dip bars and bodyweight dips. For the rotation pattern, using the battle rope, seated rotations. And for the smash pattern, maybe monkey bars and exercise selection. So you want to avoid overloading the same movement patterns, otherwise you will overwork certain muscles and likely then ignore other movement patterns. You want to make sure you focus on working a range of movement patterns within different sessions across the week or across different phases of training. So for example, in order to optimally or adequately cover the different aspects of the press pattern, on Monday's session we may include for the press bodyweight dips, which would be a press vertical downwards movement. For Wednesday's session we may do a press up, which would cover the pressing horizontally subgroup of that movement. And for Friday's session we may do a overhead shoulder press, which would cover the pressing vertically upwards. So across those 3 sessions, doing one pressing movement for each, then we've covered the whole spectrum of the press movement. Pressing forward, in addition to exercise selection, you want to try to work the spectrum of each movement pattern. And for example, this may be putting the body in different positions. So for example, if we look at the core trainer rotations, maybe on session 1 we do standing rotations, session 2 standing rotations with a handle, session 3 will be same standing rotations in a split stance, so 1 foot forward, 1 foot back. Session 4 maybe kneeling rotations, session 5 split kneeling, and then session 6 into seated rotations. So we are effectively doing the same, using the same piece of equipment, we're doing the same movement pattern, but we're trying to vary the position over those 6 sessions. The other thing to consider with exercise selection is trying to include a combination of dynamic and static or isometric dominant exercises within a session to challenge the cardiorespiratory system. So in particular, this is going to come into its own if we're planning to do a group training session, but it does apply for one-on-one sessions as well. In order to do this, we may, we'll kind of show you the exercises that are going to effectively be more challenging to the respiratory system, and those are the ones we've put in black in bold. So across the exercises that we went through earlier to try to cover all of those movement patterns, exercise 1, 3, 5 and 7, so the box drives, the pop up and run, 2 hand swings and the battle rope seated rotations are all exercises that are going to be more dynamic and therefore as a result have more of a metabolic component, elevating the heart rate and challenging the respiratory system. Regarding the order, well in particular for group training, we want to avoid training the same or similar movements on consecutive stations or ordering exercises that will work some of the same muscles. for example. So taking that same session of exercises that we've showed you previously, you do need to consider that some of those exercises are going to challenge the grip. And so the exercises that are going to potentially fatigue the grip, again highlighted in black and bold: pull-ups, kettlebell two-hand swings, and the monkey bar taps. So we wouldn't want to do these consecutively lest we have some real problems overloading and fatiguing the grip. So with this session, we've tried to separate them out. Again, we could play around with that a little bit, but we've tried to separate them. If we did those same exercises as in the order that we see here, again, looking at it simply, you wouldn't think, okay, I'm doing the step, that's a squat movement pattern. I'm doing pull-ups, that's a pull movement. Kettlebell swings, that's the lift pattern. Monkey bar taps, that's a smash pattern, etc. There's no obvious issue with kind of training those movement patterns one after the other, but the problem is the exercises we've selected for those movement patterns, pulling, lifting, and the smash pattern, in this case those three exercises all require a reasonable amount of grip involvement, and therefore if we were to program them consecutively, your forearms and grip would be absolutely blown to bits. So you should always consider this when planning the setup of the rig, and therefore the exercises you're going to select for the session or for the circuit. So to avoid the same muscles, cycling through the upper body, the lower body, and the core will help to kind of avoid overloading the same muscles one after the next. Still, you need to be aware of assistant muscles that may be worked with different movement patterns. For example, as we saw a minute ago with the grip, you might do something like a TRX row, which will be working the upper body, hanging knee raises to work the core, and then battle rope waves with a reverse lunge to work the lower body. Again, there's a reasonable amount of grip involvement in all three of those exercises, so you just need to be aware of those assistant muscles working with those. Something like the anterior core, again, same kind of thing. We may do a TRX jackknife, step press up, and power band crunches. Again, that's a lot of anterior core to do one after the other, and you're probably going to find that the anterior core can't stabilize for those three consecutive exercises well enough. So here we see an example of a one-on-one session using the rig. We can tell by the order that we're effectively pairing up the exercises. So we're going to do 4 sets of pull-ups and triple jumper step-ups. We do the pull-ups for 30 seconds, little transition for 15 seconds, triple jumper step-ups for 30 seconds, and then we take a minute's rest, and then back to pull-ups and repeat. So what we do here is we do pull-ups, and then we do one leg for the triple jumper step-ups, back to pull-ups, the other leg for triple jumper step-ups, and repeat for a total of 4 sets. Then we've got paired dips on the dip bars and a sandbag lift to the shoulder, and then monkey bar lateral hand walks paired with core trainer seated rotations, and then finishing off with battle rope double waves. Here we have an example of a small group session with 3 to 6 people using the rig. So we've got 3 stations, and what we would do here is actually pair people up. So you'd have 2 people or 1 to 2 people doing a med ball squat push press, 1 or 2 people doing the resistance band fast rows, and then 1 or 2 people doing rope alternating waves. And it actually doesn't matter. You can have 3 people, 4 people, 5 people, or 6 plus people. You don't have to be in pairs, but you can have 1 or 2 people, and it doesn't really make any difference. So with the first potentially 2 people on the med ball station, one would do 30 seconds worth of work. You'd have a very quick transition, and then the other person would do 30 seconds worth of work. So effectively, person A would train for 30 seconds, have 45 seconds off, and that would be repeated for a total of 4 times. Same people would be on doing resistance band, and the same people would be on the battle ropes. So in the end, it doesn't matter if your partner's doing the same exercise you've just done, or you're training on your own, and there's only 3 people, you're still going to be working that same work to rest ratio. We'd have 2 minutes rest, and then again we go through the next circuit, kettlebell swings, power band standing crunches, and step box drives. And then to finish, here's an example of a large group session. So this would be more of a kind of a standard circuit type session where you would perform exercises consecutively. So we would do monkey bar backward swings, core trainer squat push press, supine pull-ups, and you can kind of see the other exercises listed there. And you perform, do 30 seconds of the exercise, 30 seconds rest, and then you could either repeat that 3 times or you'd cycle through exercise A1 for 30 seconds, then move on to the next one, etc., etc. Again, that could be scheduled either a different way, but again, like we kind of mentioned earlier, you're trying to cover as many different movement patterns as possible. You're trying to have a combination of some more dynamic, so in this case kettlebell swings, rope lateral waves, etc., and you're also trying to have the kind of less dynamic, potentially isometric or just standard resistance type exercises, and a nice combination between the two will work well. So, to review, you want to make sure that you watch all the presentations for this module, and then complete the review questions for this module to ensure you've met the learning outcomes.